Hi there, welcome to the Tissot Velodrome today, where we are here to watch the UCI Hour Record attempt by Dan Bigham. So thanks for joining us. Dan will be on the track shortly, somewhere in the next 5 to 10 minutes. With the record, you do have a little bit of freedom of when you start. So in fact, here he is. So he's going to be prompt on time. We did give him a little bit of slipping room when he wanted to start. So yeah, looks like he'll be starting in the next 4 or 5 minutes. He's been brought onto the track now, fully warmed up, got his ice vest on, and yeah, ready to go and try and break this record. So yeah, to introduce you to the record, this is the UCI Hour World Record. This is a record where you're attempting to ride the furthest distance possible on the track in the allotted time, or within 60 minutes. The current record stands with Victor Campenaerts, Belgian time trial specialist, who's done 55.089 kilometers for the hour. He did that in 2019 in Aguascalientes in Mexico. That was a high altitude record, whereas this one is a lot closer to sea level here in Grenchen in Switzerland. So Dan's got his helmet on now, taking his ice vest off, ready to get onto the track. We'll be starting very, very shortly. And I am Jacob Tipper. I'll be your commentator for this today. I am Dan's coach, former housemate, former teammate, so hopefully I have a pretty good insight for you into a bit of the psychology, some of the training, and some of the physics behind this record attempt. As Dan is just clipping into the gate now, ready to start. Apologies for some of the nervous breaks as his coach. There may be a few little bits of silence from me where I'm genuinely quite nervous for Dan's own performance, let alone the fact I'm also trying to commentate on this event. But getting ready to start now in the start gate. UCI comms getting ready to get him started. Should be up in the next minute or so. As Comma says, just checking that the timekeepers are all ready to go. He's pressing the button on the gate, and we'll have 50 seconds to go for the UCI record, our record, timed by Tissot here at the Tissot Velodrome in Switzerland. Up in 34 seconds time. The gate will beep with 10 seconds to go, and then the final 5 seconds, and then he'll be off and away to attempt this record where Dan is attempting to break 55.089 kilometers. Officially, he has to break it by at least 10 meters is the rule. I'm not sure exactly what happens if you break it by less, and I'm guessing in theory you've still got the record, but apparently it's not validated, so it needs to be by over 10 meters. Dan is off in 5 seconds time. And we're off. Dan is cleanly away, off to a nice steady start. So for anyone that's ever watched any of Dan's hour records before, this is not the first one. Dan is already the British record holder, from which he took that off Sir Bradley Wiggins last year. That was done here in Grenchen. That was done the day after his partner Joss Loudon actually broke the women's record. But yeah, Dan will set off very strategically with a slightly slower pace and build up from there. So as we're going along, I'll try and keep you updated with his lap splits and with how he's getting on in comparison to the previous record. So the way that it will work is I'll be telling you the gap he's behind in time on the previous record. So he's currently 1.5 seconds down on the current record, let's say, set by Victor Campenaerts, the current world record holder. So yeah, still 1.5 seconds down. So Dan will start off strategically slower. We do expect him to be down on the record for at least the first half of the ride. That is not a problem. We are expecting to see that. Don't be put off if I'm telling you that Dan is behind and down. Don't turn off and think, okay, he's failed already. We'll only really find out whether Dan is capable of breaking this record or not in the last 15-20 minutes. That's when the damage is really done. That's when we expect Dan to really take charge of this and really go chasing that record. Physiologically, psychologically, there's a few reasons behind this strategy. It's not one that many other athletes have necessarily done before. It's quite common for athletes to go off at the required pace, ride that until you can hold it or till you don't hold it, simple as that. Psychologically, it's pretty difficult to be sat there when the pains really come into you in that last kind of 20 minutes and just trying to hold on thinking I've got to, whereas instead, Dan, the psychology that we've got behind this is that last 20 minutes, Dan might still not be on, but he should have the energy to really attack and go chasing the record. So he's chasing the pain, he's chasing that effort. It's not a case of that pain coming to him so much and where he's suddenly got to just start tolerating it and trying to hold on. Psychologically, it's not a very nice position to be in. And we do find that it's that 45 minute mark is where records really kind of make it, really kind of make or break. So at this point now in the early days, let's not look into this, I wouldn't look into the actual splits too much. I mean, he's averaging 50.7 kilometers an hour right now. So he's obviously clearly down on the record. But I say that is not a concern. That is exactly what we expect. That is exactly part of our strategy. And then he will start to build it from there. So we are 10 laps into this record now, 2.5k done, average speed 51.5. This will build quite progressively for the first kind of 5-10 minutes because it has to make up for that extra slow first lap you do. You know, obviously you're starting that lap at 0, not at 55k an hour. So it will start to rise quite dramatically and then it will kind of settle around that 53, 54 kilometre an hour mark. He'll stay there for a bit and then he'll start building, start really chasing this record. So send in your questions as well, send in any questions or comments you have today. I've got a media team that will be telling me what they are and sending the good ones in. So if you send in anything horrible, telling me my accent's no good, then I'm afraid I won't actually be able to see them and won't be able to start speaking in a non-Birmingham accent for you. So yeah, send them in. Any good questions, I'll be sent over and I'll try and answer any of those for you. Right, we are 13 laps in, up to 52.2k an hour. He's holding split quite nicely. I'm going to start going into a bit more information on the actual event for you. So this event is arguably one of the most prestigious in cycling. Obviously cycling has the Tour de France, the World Championships. But what it doesn't have compared to a lot of other sports, it doesn't really have records in the same way, or not from an elite perspective. There's plenty of niche records that people love doing in our sport. You can have the record from Lance and the John O'Groats, but from a professional point of view, with time trialling being an event that's always on different courses, always affected by wind, affected by all these, like, you know, how many climbs you've got on it, it means that we haven't really got, from a professional point of view, time trial records. We haven't really got time trial records from an international perspective. The UK's got 10 and 10, 25, but from international wise, there's not long time trial based efforts. The closest one to this is probably the 4K on the track, but obviously that is, well, 56 minutes shorter, so quite a long way away. So this is the only real record that endurance elite pro athletes have got to really challenge. So that is why this record has attracted some of the greatest names in the world of cycling. This record has been held by Merckx, Moser, Copy, Anquetil. It's even been attempted by British rider Tommy Simpson, who actually failed when he tried to get it. More recently, Bradley Wiggins, Alex Dowsett. The UK has got a real good history of this event, where there was a real good battle between Chris Boardman, Graham O'Brien. And there's been various rule changes throughout this, with this kind of record as well, where this has actually changed in terms of the rules that you're allowed for this. So I'll go into a bit of a history about that, but just to really put out there, like, the names on this list who've held this record are astonishing. It's the same for the women's. Like, the women's record is now held by Ellen van Dijk, who's world champion time trialist and one of the most prominent time trialists of her era. But yeah, many other top female athletes as well. And it's even a record that, because, as I say, it's one of our only records. There's para records for this. There are age group records for this, and, you know, there's a lot of people that have spent a lot of time trying, attempting, many failing this really hard effort that ultimately looks very simple. It does look as simple as you ride around the track for 60 minutes and see how far you can go, but the effort really starts to bite. It's not as simple as people think it is. It's not as easy as people think it is. There's also a lot of good athletes that have been put off and never quite attempted this record on the track. There are also lots of good time trialists. There was always speculation of Fabian Cancellara and Tony Martin attempting this record, but they never did. I think potentially put off by how fast Bradley Wiggins went in 2015 when he held it. So yeah, Dan is currently now 24 laps in, 6 kilometres in, so he's now at 53.2k an hour. So like I say, that is behind the record at the moment, but we're not too worried about that right now. Yeah, 3.6 seconds down on Victor Campenaerts right now. As we say, that's not of concern. If he suddenly drops off a long way, then we're concerned, but we are expecting Dan to be paced under that record, start to build it back, start to claw it back, and then really attack the second half of this and build it all to a big crescendo at the end, rather than other athletes, if you have watched these before, may go out on split, may ride the exact pace they're trying to for the whole day, and normally just try and hold on, or just try not to fade in those last 5-10 minutes when the sensations just become awful and the pain of the whole effort really gets to you. So I'll actually introduce you to Dan the athlete for anyone that is new to this and doesn't know much about Dan. So Dan currently riding here in their splendid in his pink INEOS kit. This is not the normal INEOS kit. He is not officially a rider for INEOS. He's actually a performance engineer. So Dan strikes the fine balance between athlete and engineer within the sport of cycling. So he rose to prominence in around 2016 when he went from being a relatively average time trialist that I always take the mick out of because that year he was actually slower than me at time trialing, to suddenly discovering, well, he'd already discovered aerodynamics, but he made aerodynamics really work for him and broke the British national competition record for the individual pursuit, so the quickest time ever done at nationals. It wasn't the UK record, but quickest for the competition. In the individual pursuit, won the team pursuit and the kilo that year. Was put one of our founding members and set up KGF, which went on to become Who What Bike the track team. That year he continued to break to take UK time trial championships, so he won the national 10, the national 25 time trial championship. And then he really started to shine internationally when the track trade team, which at the time Team KGF, we actually went and won a track World Cup in Minsk. And that was led through a combination of Dan's own personal performance, Dan being a massive part of the engine room as such in that. He'd doing some really long turns, really aerodynamic himself, but also actually bringing the engineering perspective to the rest of us, the team. He made all of us aero. He consulted with many sponsors and equipment and helped us select from anything. Helmets, we made our own aero socks, we had specific skin suits. We went to town, and that was kind of, there were athletes that had adopted aerodynamics back then, but it wasn't quite so common. You know, the Russian team we faced in the final of that event in Minsk were not aerodynamically tuned up the same way that we were. And yet it was through Dan's kind of bright thinking and engineering background that he helped drive the team and himself to success there. And we, won a track World Cup as not as a nation, but competing as a trade team that we'd set up ourselves with no support. Essentially, we funded that ourselves. So that made quite a good little story. And at that point there, people probably thought that was it. Like, we'd had the little kind of David versus Goliath. Dan was this aero guru that had come along, made his mates fast, and that was all great. That was it. But no, Dan was not happy with that. That wasn't enough for him, and he kept pushing, he kept driving, he drove the team on further. He started creating relationships with professional teams, where he worked with Canyon SRAM's women's team, the Ribble World Type Pro team, and continued pushing until he essentially just got more international dominance. So that was probably highlighted with a bronze medal in the World TTT Champs in Harrogate. That was actually also with two other teammates, John Archibald and Harry Tanfield, who were also track teammates of his. Just because rather than just telling stories, to give an update, we are 10 minutes in now, and we are at 53.8 kilometres an hour. We're 6 seconds down on the record. Like I say, I'm just giving you a bit of background as to all this for now, because for this first half, We're not looking into it too much. We're not overanalyzing this. We expect Dan to be down on the current record. He's going to remain this way for a good half an hour or so. So we're not going to worry about that too much right now. So the updates, by the sounds of it, I can just about hear Johnny Whale, who's giving Dan splits across the track. He's on split, he's on track. His body language is super comfortable. We won't expect to see much movement in that, or really any tells from Dan's riding for a good while yet. We did a practice run the other day, and it's such a standard procedure for Dan now to be doing these long efforts on the track. You have no idea whether there's any level of fatigue building up. Anything bad's going on, he just looks so comfortable, so dialed. So unfortunately, this really will be a case of we'll really get to see the tell of is Dan going to break this record in this last half an hour or so. So 44 laps in now, 11k done, 6.6 seconds behind the current record. To give a bit of history about the event. It's actually a very, very old event. So I'll go through my facts. The first recorded distance for the hour was set in 1873 by James Moore in Wolverhampton. I felt the need to find a West Midlands based fact in there. But yeah, that was the first official recorded distance. The comments on Wikipedia do then suggest it wasn't potentially accurate, but that was where it all started. From there, once the start of the Cycling Federation set up, what is now the UCI, records then started to take place more regularly from kind of 1893 onwards. Many of those were based in Buffalo Velodrome in Paris. That was with both male and female athletes taking part in them. Very kind of popular way of the sports of having this record. The other records weren't. There's various records around the world, but this was the one that really united the sport. People from all different countries, all different places do it. I say the famous athletes that really started with this event. Fausto Coppi was Giro d'Italia winner, one of the most famous cyclists, has his own bike brand. He was famous for it. He actually did one of his hour records in Milan during World War II, which was apparently being bombed at the time. So yeah, people take this record pretty seriously. The record then kept expanding with new athletes and new technology going forward. So Jacques Anquetil, sorry if I'm butchering the names, in the 1950s and 60s, he broke the record a couple of times. In the women's scene, you also had Elsie Jacobs, who's the first woman to break 40 kilometres. She's now got a women's pro race named after her. So a lot of the names that I'll read out, if you're into your cycling history, you should be very familiar with. It is the best and the greatest names in cycling have all really taken on this record at one point or another. And there's only a kind of few climbers or a few exceptions of Marco Pantano that's not the sort of rider that's ever taken this on, but the big all-round powerhouses of the sport have all been here taking this on and really had a go at this monumental effort. So Dan is now 52 laps in. We're up to 54k an hour. 54.071k an hour, and he's 7.5 seconds down on the current record. So I will keep trying to keep you updated the best I can. Sorry, and now I'm going to try and find a few of your questions. So equipment-wise, always one that cyclists like to know, what bike's he on? So there's obviously a few little bits here that are kind of still all under NDAs and signed away and not released. So the only thing I can tell you with the bike really is it's a Pinarello prototype. Not sure on the. I've been told to tell you that there's no additional information on that frame as of yet. But that is paired with some Princeton wheels. They've come out especially for this event. He's in then other bits of equipment. He's got Wattshop Cractus cranks, which are actually another part of Dan's ensemble, which I probably should have mentioned earlier. Is Dan actually has his own company, Wattshop, as well, which creates and designs aerodynamic parts and engineers them himself. So they're actually his own cranks that he's riding, which is quite different compared to many of the more recent records. Has been done previous records where athletes have built their own equipment. I'll go back onto that a little bit later. Other things that Dan is using, Izumi chain, Conti tyres. I think the chains have been treated with muck off. He's got some custom Nimble Expect shoes. Well, I'm not sure if they've been released yet, but I've been told I'm allowed to tell you that. BioRacer skin suit. It's equipped with a core core sensor that measures your core temperature, or measures a few of the features around there. Washout cranks, yeah. His own chainring as well as part of the cranks, and his own sprocket. So I think that should give you a good idea of some of the stuff that goes into that. A few of those bits of details, if you have any more questions, I can go into it on a bit more. But like I say, this is a very secretive project. In part, some of these things haven't been released. They are prototypes, and they've all been signed off by the UCI to clarify. It's nothing that won't. The majority of it is all commercially available, but there's a few bits that I can't all go into. So 61 laps in, 15k in, 54.2k an hour, 8.1 seconds down on Victor Campenaerts right now. He's lapping through in, let's bring up his schedule, it's about 16.2 second laps right now, which is again where we expect him to be right now. Actually, no, he's not. I just brought up his schedule and I was like, oh no, he's not actually meant to be going that fast right yet. So as I was thinking that, I could overhear Johnny shouting at him to calm down a little bit. So he's actually riding slightly up on schedule, which he's not meant to be doing. Still up on schedule, so he's riding 16.2 second laps now, which we didn't actually want him doing just yet. I imagine Dan will start to calm it down a little bit, just try and settle back into it. It's very easy to obviously get carried away in these records. There's a lot of pressure, a lot of expectation on this. Still a 16.2 second lap, so it could be that he feels amazing and he's going to just go for it, but I'd be surprised if he doesn't start to calm it down a little bit soon. We're up to 54.27k an hour, but still 8 seconds down on, let's say, Victor Campenaerts' record, as we're just gone 18 minutes in. So still a long way to go. Still got a long way to kind of determine the outcome of this record. Very, like I say, very early days. So back to some of his equipment. So obviously like I say, the new bike will be released soon. So I know that he's had to do a lot of work on himself as part of his role with INEOS. He's had a lot of input into the bike himself, a lot of input into the wheels, and just the general design, and then the same with the BioRacer skin suit. Dan is very responsible. He claims a lot of ownership for his own success. He's not just like in sport there is a lot of, you can almost get unlucky with your kind of the surroundings or what you've got, or if your team only offer up certain equipment, certain bits. Dan has turned that on its head, and he's really taken ownership of everything he can within the sport of cycling. His own bars, he's helping design the frame, the equipment, the clothing, and that's obviously the thing that eventually then got him working in with INEOS, that they wanted to take this IP and this mentality that he's got of ultimately making everything as fast as possible. I can tell you from experience, we've spent endless hours, weekends, nights, going through spreadsheets, going through Dan's wacky ideas of, can we test this, can we test that, can we test the other, and he's so driven to make everything as optimally fast as possible, and it's another level. So 71 laps in now, Dan has gone back on the split now, so we're at 16.3 second laps now, 54.3k an hour, and we are just under 8 seconds down on Victor Campenaerts' current record. So I've got a little bit of time before hopefully Dan starts building it back up again. I'll give you a little bit more history of the event to make up for all this time that I spent having to double check it and go through all this stuff. So the record, again, super old, from the 90s, kept developing from there. So in the 80s was the next time that the records really kind of got exciting again. That was when bikes essentially got super exciting. The difference between the bikes in the start of the 1800s, with the end of the 1800s and the kind of 40s probably wasn't a huge difference, not aerodynamically anyway. The 80s was when bikes got cool, in my opinion. That was when we got double discs, we got fancy carbon frames. So that also the real driver of that in terms of driving the performance mark on was Moser. Like I say, used double disc skin suits for the first time. That made a massive difference to the record, really pushing it on, and really being bringing a lot more excitement back into this record that had been held before for a long period of time. Sorry, I've missed out a massive person in all this. Sorry, we took a bit of a jump after Anquetil in the 50s and 60s. It was then Eddie Merckx in 1972, Mexico City, with a distance of 49.431. So that's important. So we're going to go back to that in a little bit as to why that's important. But that was the last kind of traditional record on a normal round bars, no skin suit, no fancy technology, just a big, strong Belgian muscling his way around the track. Although again, that was actually up in Mexico City, so also at altitude. Again, back to Dan, we are almost 20 kilometres in now, 79 laps in. He's at 16.2 second laps, so he's at 54.4k an hour, so 7.3 seconds down. So he's starting to eat back towards Victor's record again. We're still not going to get too excited just yet. This is only 22 minutes in. Again, it sounds simple, but there's a lot of things to go wrong in this. This record really comes to bite you. It's not as simple as people think. And yeah, so the history. So that was a kind of very famous one by Eddie Merckx. You know, he was maybe people that are new to this, Eddie Merckx is probably one of those famous people in the world of cycling, with multiple world championship wins, multiple Tour de France wins. I won't get myself in trouble by getting any of those facts wrong and exactly how many, but yeah, to all intents and purposes, he's what is debated to be the most famous cyclist, most famous male cyclist of all time. So yeah, when we started to get into our aero was when it all really kicked off. So in the 90s, we have I'd almost argue cult hero, Graham O'Brien. That's when he started taking the record on with some very unusual positions. He's famous for building his own bike, so very similar to Dan in that sense. He's actually was again very part of his own performance, where he built his own bikes with what's famous, he said, as parts from his own washing machine. This then led to a bit of a battle between him and Boardman in this generation, where they've kind of tried various different positions. Boardman came out on top in the end with on the famous Lotus 110 bike, where he did 56.3k an hour in the Superman position. So that is still on record the furthest distance that anyone has actually done in the hour record. We'll go back to why that's not the actual record shortly. 86 laps in, 21.5k done, 54.5k an hour. So yeah, so Boardman had this super crazy position, and then the Superman arms as far out as possible. The bike was amazing. It's an absolute piece of art if you ever go and look at it. The Lotus 1010 bike. Unfortunately, its designer Mike Burrows actually passed away this week, but I know that's definitely like a person that would very much have inspired Dan. He was a kind of founding father of the modern carbon bike and aerodynamics, and he actually passed away this week. So. Which is very sad, and people like Chris Boardman have already spoke out and said what an influence he was. For Dan being a budding bike engineer, he's definitely someone he'd looked up to. But yeah, that bike was an absolute piece of art. So 90 laps in, 54.6k an hour, 6.1 seconds down on Victor now. We're at 16.1 second laps, so Danny's starting to wind it up a little bit. So after Boardman set this record of 56.3k for the record, the UCI then changed its rules. They thought the bike technology was maybe getting a little bit carried away. Bikes were getting a little bit too extreme and a little bit too fast. So the rules dramatically changed within cycling, and then what they did then was they actually reverted the hour record back to the time of Eddie Merckx. So essentially they've reverted the record back to 1972. So you then had to start attempting the record on a round tubed bike, normal drop handlebars, old kit, and from 1997 till 2014, that was actually the rules of the hour. It then became all equipment essentially got neutralised out of it, and you had to do it on this old equipment. So 94 laps in now, 25 minutes, he's doing 16.0 laps. So like I say, the record then changed. That did not stop Chris Boardman from still trying to break it. Whether he felt aggrieved that essentially his record had almost been taken off him by them changing the rules, he decided whatever the rules were, he was still going to go out and get that hour record. So he then went and got the record off essentially Eddie Merckx, beat Eddie Merckx's record by a mere 10 metres at Manchester Velodrome in the year 2000. As I say, I'm not actually sure what the rules are if you'd only beat it by 9 minutes, but the rules and regulations that I've seen say you have to officially beat it by 10 metres for it to count, which thankfully he did. That record was finally beaten by, I'm going to struggle with the name here, sorry, but I'm going to say Szczesnek, sorry, with 49.7k an hour. So that was where that record then stood. He did that in 2005, and then to be honest, I think there's a lot of interest lost in the record after that point there. Athletes no longer really attempted it. So he attempted that in 2005, and then from what I'm aware, no serious hitters went for this record until the rules then changed in 2014. I'm sure a few people may have attempted it here or there, but it really wasn't taken on the way it has been in recent years. So we are just coming towards 100 laps right now. Where are we on? We are at 27 minutes 24. We are 4.4 seconds down on Victor Campenaerts's record, and he's done 54.73k an hour. This is 100 laps done of this velodrome. It's a 250 metre velodrome. This is the kind of common length for an indoor track. It's not the only length. Aigle in Switzerland, which is just down the road, down the road, a few hours away. That's the home. That's like the home of the UCI. That is a 200 metre indoor track, and then some of the 6-day tracks can be even shorter than that. But this is the traditional distance or traditional length of an indoor track, 250 metres. For anyone that's not getting new to this, there are outdoor tracks which typically are not as quick. The environment cannot be as controlled. There are some of them are wooden, but the majority of them I would say are concrete. Especially in the UK, we did have an outdoor wooden track up in Edinburgh that got demolished because essentially the wood doesn't last very well outdoors. But the Barcelona track is wooden and still survives. So outdoor tracks can be wooden as well. But generally speaking, they can be almost of any distance. So if you go through the list of old records, there are people that have done them on all sorts of tracks, all sorts of random length tracks out there. But this is the really controlled one here, 250 metres. This is the one that essentially makes the most sense for our record, at least anyway. I'll go into a little bit more on that later. So we are at 105 laps now, 3.3 seconds down. He's riding 16.1 second laps. So I'm just going to bring up his schedule in. So this is where he needs to be. He's in exactly the ballpark. This is the target splits for what he's aiming for. Exactly where I want to be. 29 minutes coming up now. And yeah, 3.1 seconds down the record. So he's coming back at it. I think he had with a couple of quick laps he had earlier on that he probably wasn't quite meant to have. We're hoping they won't come back to bite him. It actually means we never got that far off the record that we're meant to. And the furthest down we were meant to be was about 13 seconds, and he's never been further than about 8 seconds off the record in the end. So I think he went off a little bit hotter than he was originally meant to. We will see how that affects him later on. So yeah, we're here in Grenchen, Switzerland. This track is one where many of the current new records have been. So that was the next bit of history that I was going to go on to. This is where many of the modern records have been set. So in 2014, the UCI reverted the regulations. It wasn't quite the same regulations from the Boardman era, where you could ride Superman position, you could ride these crazy bikes. The rules are now reset, so you have to ride whatever the current UCI regulation is. Now, those bikes and positions weren't quite as quick as the Boardman era, but they were substantially quicker than the Eddie Merckx era, of which the old record was set at. So that was then the new benchmark. So it was from what we're going to call the Eddie Merckx era. Is what the record was reset to, and what athletes then had to go and try and beat. So the record then stood as again, I'm going to butcher his name, sorry, but Enka's record of 49.7. Sorry for the bad pronunciation. The record was essentially reset to there, and that's what that was what you now needed to beat. But you had the option of discs and fast equipment, which they did not have. So 30 minutes in, 54.8k done. We are 1 second down, 1.2 seconds down on Victor's record right now. Again, let's not get too excited, let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's very, very early days. It's about 40 minutes, 45 minutes is where records are really make or break. So yeah, let's see how he starts performing at that point there before we get too excited. At the moment, this is all on split. This is all exactly what we are expecting to happen. Obviously, normally a commentator might give their own predictions of what can happen or what you think is going to happen. Like, yeah, we know that Dan, with the performance that we've put, with Dan's capabilities, with his aerodynamics, with the support that's gone into this attempt, we know he's capable. But that, we can't just predict that that's all going to happen on the day. There's a lot of fine margins. There's a lot of influences that come into this. Is he capable? Yes, of course he's capable. He wouldn't be attempting if he wasn't capable. But is he going to do it? We've got, the next 15 minutes is where we'll really start to see what's going to happen. For now, all good, not a problem. He's looking in control. He's looking solid. And yeah, we're riding 16-second laps on the dot. It has his average speed as 49.941 now. He's almost exactly on pace with the record, so he's 0.019 down on the current record. So, like I say, with the resetting the record back to 49.7 k an hour, the first person to attempt it is a bit of almost a testimonial race. Leading into his retirement was actually Jens Voigt. They've got this really good velodrome. They've got pictures of anyone that set records here, and they've got a big picture of Jens Voigt, and I can see exactly what distance he did. So 51.1 k an hour, or kilometres, sorry. So he did that here. Very strong, very capable rider, a lot of power. Probably wasn't the best executed hour we've ever seen. He's not traditionally a track rider. He's not traditionally a time trialist, so he did come out of position quite a lot. He used a lot of brute force rather than executing a super clean record. While that's changed, it's telling me that we are now up on the record. We are 0.8 seconds up on the record. Is what the lap split's telling me. However, it's also telling me the average speed is 54.97, which obviously is below the record. The record is 55.089. So he's not telling me he's up, but I don't believe he is. Hopefully in the next few laps that will be the case. So yeah, Jens Voigt went and got it. That was the start of basically our records becoming exciting again. This thing that had been exciting in parts of time from the 1800s, the end of the 1800s, it kind of died a bit of a death with this rule change, and then came back. And since then, lots of athletes have attempted it. It was broken a few months later by Matthias Brandl, who did it in Argyll, so did it a few hours away, also in Switzerland. He did it in 51.852. Then, I want to get on my order right. Then the next, I believe, would have been Rowan Dennis with 52.491 k an hour. Again, Rowan Dennis, world champion. For time trialing, very, very prominent time trial athlete, super all-round strong rider. So a lot of big names in the modern sport have taken it on. Yes, like I say, he also did that record here. The next one is back to British athletes. Alex Dowsett, who did 53.937 in Manchester in 2015. As we are Dan's coming up to 128 laps, 35 minutes now. It's telling me he's 2 seconds up on the record. His average speed is 55.020. As again, he's telling me that he's not quite up on the record just yet. But he's looking really strong. You can hopefully visibly see the speed has picked up. He's riding 16-second laps now. This is now his strategy for the rest of it. So he's had that steadier start. He's going to try and hold these splits now, and then he's going to start to try and kick it. So the target, we know, the way that we've gone into this is the exact opposite of the way you normally do it, where he's in the last 15 minutes, instead of it being a matter of holding on for grim death, the idea is that's when he can really start attacking the record. That's the plan, that's the way that we want to approach it. Unfortunately, we'll only find out whether that's capable of happening towards the end. So yeah, Alex Dowsett 2015, 53.937 k an hour, and then the big one was Bradley Wiggins. So Bradley Wiggins set it in London. He raised the benchmark to 54.526 k an hour in London. That was deemed almost unassailable at the time. Like, I remember thinking that is crazy fast. Like, just absolutely annihilated it. Again, I'd suggest that maybe the reason that some of the prominent time trialists of that generation did not attempt the record because of how impressive that was. Done in London, racing for Team Wiggins at the time. It was a amazing feat, and actually Dan was there to watch it. Dan is one of the more fashionable t-shirts I've ever seen Dan in was Dan's Wiggins t-shirt that he was wearing at Wiggins' Hour Record. The rest of Dan's fashion, not so good, but that t-shirt, yeah, it's probably one of the most fashionable in his attire. So yeah, Dan was definitely inspired by that event. Again, at the time, Dan was a relatively average time trialist. I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying. It just converted from triathlon, just come out of university, and was just kind of starting his cycling journey. But yeah, definitely taken a lot of inspiration from that event. And then the record held still for a little bit. There were many failed attempts after that. Not all of them necessarily, depending on what you think they were going for. There was a lot of the Danish athletes have had a go. Martin Toft Madsen and Mikael Berg. They've both had a few attempts. Failed attempts. They failed to ever break the record, but they have taken Danish titles. As I say, this is a record where you can proudly have national titles, age group titles. There's a lot of things you can go for. So Dan is currently on 16.0197 laps. So it says he's 4.5 seconds up on Victor right now. 55.1 k an hour. Johnny is shouting him lots of encouragement across the track. So yeah, and then the big one was the current record. So Victor Kampenaerts, Belgian, his former Belgian TT champion, very prominent in international time trials, and he's also making a very good go of it on the road. You may have seen him in breakaways in Belgian classics. He went to Aguascalientes in Mexico, where he rode 55.09 in 2019. So that is the current record right now. As I say, that is actually not as far as Chris Boardman did, but that unfortunately the old Chris Boardman regs were taken out, so that record no longer stands. So this is the current record, 55.098, and Dan is currently averaging 55.125. So Dan is currently up on that with 38 minutes done. So this is where we're going to start to see the tells. This is where we're going to start to get a much better idea of how Dan is getting on. We see this all, we've spent a lot of time doing this. Dan has done many attempts. One thing that we've worked out very, very quickly, and we've seen lots of athletes do this, is you cannot say, if I can do 55k an hour or 54k an hour for 30 minutes, I can definitely do it for an hour, which is really common. The common practice is people will do a 30-minute trial run. How did you feel? Yeah, still felt good after 30 minutes. Okay, great, you'll be fine in the day. We can afford to drop 2%, 3%, 4%, and you'll still get the record. It doesn't happen. It's around here it really bites. This is when something changes, that it's not the same as training. So I'm sure you've heard rumours that of what other athletes have done here, or other athletes have done this for half an hour. It doesn't count. This is not what matters. 55.153, Dan is still riding 16.0 second laps. So this is when it gets really tough. This is when it gets really hard. This is when you have to start digging in. At the moment, he's looking good. 15.98. So that is the quickest lap we've seen so far. So this is what we're talking about. This is the psychology. We want to see Dan attack this record right now. We're expecting that last 5-10 minutes could be really hard. It could start to drop a little bit. But this is where we want him to attack it. This isn't about what other people have done, where they've been, other people have been holding this pain, this split, this power now for 40 minutes. This is where it starts to bite. They don't always have the energy to pick it up. They don't always have the energy to keep the same split, whereas we're doing this the other way. This is where Dan should be attacking it, 15.95. So this is where Dan's really going for it and really, really attacking this record. So this is a sea level record as opposed to going to Aguascalientes which is almost like an altitude-based record. There's no difference. It doesn't matter. There's no award for the best altitude or best non-altitude. It's just about the record. We considered altitude. It's something we've looked at. It's something that you get. There are potentially gains from. As Dan goes through another 15.9 second lap. Essentially, there's air density is substantially lower up at altitude. Aguascalientes is 1,800, 1,900 metres above sea level. So air density is lower. That is potentially advantageous. However, that comes at a cost, is the lower partial pressure of oxygen basically makes breathing a lot harder. I won't go into the full physiology of why, but I think people are familiar that altitude is harder, it's harder to put the power out. In theory, you'd think that basically the advantage you get in speed is worth it offsets the drop you get in power loss through the loss of partial pressure of oxygen. Not less oxygen, less pressure of oxygen to essentially get into lungs. Right, sorry, I'm going into too much physiology. It should be faster, but there's other uncontrolled environments. We're here in Switzerland. Dan's family are here. It's easy to get to. If worst case scenario happens, we can drive something over to here. Available hotels. We've been able to control the temperature of this velodrome. It's been a controlled, really controlled study. As you can see here, there's no fans. There's no spectators. We've kept this in a really controlled environment. And that's one of the advantages of being here compared to in Mexico, which obviously suddenly isn't so easy. The nutrition's suddenly harder to get. It's hard to get all your stuff out there. There's a lot of other things go on that actually do make that record pretty hard to go and get at altitude. It's not. I think some people must see it as a free pass or like a cheap way of going and doing it. That's not the case. It's hard to go and get that record up there. It's also quite a bit hotter when you can't control that. So the temperature was super hot here at the start of this week, and thankfully it started to drop. As Dan's done another 15.9 second lap, so I will keep you updated, 55.24 k/h now. So he's looking really good for this, really good, but like I say, still time, but he's currently 10 seconds up on the record. So the moment he's looking really good. The fact that he's picking this up is really good on the 16.0 second lap. This is looking really positive, really good. I'm just trying to kind of keep myself controlled. Yeah, it was really hot here, thankfully the temperature's dropped a little bit. Again, there's a balance with that. The hotter it is, the more it potentially decreases that air density to go faster, but then the more essentially that heat builds up, and it's another thing for you to offset, to overcome, another thing that makes the physiology of the event harder and harder to try and get through. We are at 160 laps now. I believe it's 221, 222 is what Dan needs to beat. So roughly 11.5 seconds up right now, 55.26 k/h. It's looking good, it's looking controlled, but as I say, this is where it can start to go wrong now. Another interesting one actually in terms of the crowd as well, we were discussing this earlier, so 4 Bradley Wiggins attempts and 4, apparently I was just told this as well by the owner of the track here, 4 Rowan Dennis's attempts. They tried to control the temperature of the velodrome, as you do, you want that controlled environment that you know you're able to perform in. You then bring all the fans in, and they make a lot of noise and a lot of heat. And apparently, for both those records, the temperature inside then suddenly picked up by somewhere between 1 to 2 degrees. Now that is something that can have a real big influence, a real big knock-on effect to that performance as well. So that's another reason why we've kept this in a real close, controlled environment, is to help control that physiology, help control this environment that we've really got here. So 34.35 mile an hour, sorry, 34.35 mile an hour for any Americans that are watching, or any British that are still in mile an hour. 55.291 we are now, still knocking out 16 second laps, 12 seconds up on Victor's record. As we're coming up to the 45-minute mark very shortly. As I've been saying for the whole record, this is the important bit. This is where you start to fall apart. This is where you can start to fade. So far, he's driven into this. He's been picking this up. This is what we want to see. This is the approach we want to see him take. But there's still lots of time. Dan is a very headstrong athlete. If Dan's on a terrible day, he'd still have tried to ride these splits. Dan could have set off and felt terrible 5 minutes in. He'd still have tried to ride these splits. So we do not know whether we do not know at this point how he's feeling, how he's getting on. So a novel little thing we're doing now. You may have heard, or you may not have heard. There's no noise from our very few fans. We've got a few family members, a few members of the track, a few important people, sponsors. They're all here to watch. Until now, they've been told they're not allowed to make any noise, but to keep this super controlled, super quiet, no big atmosphere. It's just any old day on the track. Dan turns up, does his thing, warms up properly, gets on the track, go. Hopefully you saw at the start how quick and efficient it was, literally. Dan got up the gate, got in the track, went. He's now been told the fans are allowed to make some noise. I'll be honest, as we've only got about 14 of them, it's not making that much noise, but hopefully psychologically that can start to create something, a bit more excitement, give Dan that bit more drive. Obviously, if you to give this cheering on all the way through, then it doesn't really help, it doesn't really do a lot. Well, it does, but by the time you get to this point now, it's the same noise that you heard earlier on. Whereas now, hopefully, the atmosphere can start to pick up a little bit. People will start cheering him on and hear his name being shouted and get a bit more excited about this record, and really drive it on from there. 15.89 seconds, that's the quickest lap I've seen so far. 14.7 seconds up on Victor. 55.33 k an hour. This is looking very, very good as we're coming up to about 13 minutes to go of this record. Oh. From a positional point of view, he's looking driven. This is something we've done a lot. He's looking very stable. This is something we've done a lot of work in. Now, I'm sure there's been people asking about his power, about his CDA. I have been given the freedom to tell you a few of those things. Dan's CDA, we are looking at something around the 0.15 value. That is obscenely aerodynamic. I had a coached athlete the other day ask me a little bit about aero, and I told him, I was telling him a few values. He didn't realise you could get below 0.20. Danny's 25% more aero than some people even realise you can get. He's obscenely aerodynamic. His position is just absolutely obscene. But it's not just that, it's a case of holding this position for an hour. It's definitely not easy to get in a wind tunnel and suddenly be that aerodynamic, but it is possible to ride in a slightly more aerodynamic position. When you're in the wind tunnel, you're in a fixed position, you're not having to try and ride it and try and hold it for an hour. We've put a lot into Dan holding this very specific effort. Dan does so much work on his time trial bike, so much work on this aero position, whether it's on the turbo, whether it's on the road, whether it's in his new, where he now lives in Andorra. Dan spends so much time in this position, and this is something we've measured. This is something we looked into with previous attempts. As we've said, Dan has done a lot of these attempts in training now. We've not just done some 30 minutes. This is his fourth or fifth main going for it attempt, where we've recorded everything, we've taken values, and one of them we looked at was even putting sensors in his helmet, and we found, very simply, that essentially the more he moved his head, the less aerodynamic he was. Not really that unsurprising. You do see athletes suddenly start getting tired, they start moving around the bike, the heads start going, the aero then goes. It's super common. You get tired and people try and just push harder, but instead they should be getting more aerodynamic. As we go 15.9 seconds and 55.37 Ks he has done. 17 seconds up on the record now. So this position he's holding is really paying dividends. This is why he's so fast. His power is it's impressive, it's good, but it's not as good as some of these other athletes. One of the athletes I forgot to mention, Miguel Indurain, apparently was 500 watts. There is a study out on it that he did, that some Spanish sports scientists did at the time. 500 watts he apparently did for that hour. Danny's nowhere near those values, but Dan overcomes that with this aerodynamics. He's like the slipperiest person in cycling. Potentially there might be a few female athletes slightly more aerodynamic than him, purely because they're not 6 foot tall. But from a male perspective, I don't believe there's anyone more aerodynamic on a bike than Dan. And to be honest, this is a credit to trying different sports and trying different things to suit you. 55.4 k an hour average we are on now, 183 laps. He's 18 seconds up on the record. We're coming at 10 minutes to go. So this is looking really positive, really good. This is 15.9 seconds that last lap. So he's cranking it, he's picking it up, he's going for it. Yeah, he's looking fantastic. But yeah, what makes Dan this position? One is, like I said, he's put so much work into this position. This has not come overnight. It's so easy to go to do work on your aero, get aero, and think, no, it's done. That's it. Whereas Dan, every test he tries to find something, test something, does something different, finds it. As someone living with him that was trying to also improve, it would crack me completely, because I was trying to find aerodynamics and wouldn't find anything. By no improvements, Dan, every test finds something, just pulls aerodynamic improvements out of thin air. Yeah, don't know how he does it, but he does it, and that's one of the things that just makes him so fast, that he's so driven. And then the other one is he has just ultimately got this unique build, this unique anthropometric build, and that's the benefit of trying other sports. As he goes 54.4 k an hour average right now, he's still holding 16-second laps with 10 laps to go. Yeah, Dan has got like a weird body shape. He's got short legs, a long back, and a long neck. Like, in what other sport is that possibly like what you want? But if that's the thing, if you try these different sports, you try these different disciplines, you try things, Dan has gone out of his way and found the thing that worked for him. It turns out that is riding ridiculously aerodynamically on a like I say, what other sport would long neck be good in? But no, Dan has found the sport where a long neck is fantastic. He's 20 seconds up on the record now, 55.43 k an hour. So at the moment he's absolutely smashing this, but we've still got 8 and a bit minutes to go. Yeah, I'm sure Victor is watching this somewhat nervously and hoping that something goes wrong. Well, no, I'm sure he's not. I'm sure he's very good spirited and hoping that Dan does his best. But yeah, it must be difficult watching this and seeing that the record's potentially going away from you. But right now he's looking super strong. He's going to be, I mean, he's 21 seconds up, so he's potentially a full lap up on where he needs to be right now. Lapping through in 16 seconds dead still. 55.439 kilometres an hour. So like I say, we've got all that with aerodynamics, but then obviously that still has to be driven by an engine. So you know, there's probably been a million messages of people asking what's his power. Obviously, he's not got a power meter on today, so we will have to reverse calculate what we think this is. But we know it's somewhere in the kind of 350 to 370 mark, somewhere between on what the final atmospheric conditions were, how well his position was held, how fast all this stuff was. Again, that might not sound amazing. Like some people thinking, oh, I'll do that about Zwift. Try doing that in this position, in this environment. That's what makes this so impressive. Yeah, a lot of the numbers get exaggerated when people think what they do in these positions. As we're coming up to 194 laps, another 15.9 second lap, 55.4 k an hour average, 22 seconds up on the current record. So yeah, like I think when you want to compare, like I say, while you had Miguel Indurain doing like 1,000,000 watts, 500 watts, something crazy, you're talking about the others, Jens Voigt, Rowan Dennis, Bradley Wiggins. They're all looking at somewhere around the 410, 420 mark. So Danny's doing this record of close on 50 watts less than those people, and that is through this applied aerodynamics, applied engineering. That's Dan's background. Dan's university course was in engineering. His work experience was working with Mercedes F1. It's not just about the theoretical side of this physics, it's about the applied side of it. And that's what he's done, and he's just been this ultimate experiment on himself. He's showing what's possible. He's done a 15.9 second lap, 23 seconds up now. But yeah, this is astonishing. Dan is looking very on for this. Like I don't want to count my chickens. It's not over till it's over, but 15.9 seconds, it's looking very, very good. There's a lot of, Dan will have seen all the people on Facebook and all the people that have said he can't do this, and have seen the comments on YouTube saying, oh, he won't be able to do this, Dan can't do that. He's driving, he's digging in, you can see his body language, he's starting to change a little bit. He's fighting now, but he's still holding 16-second laps. He's still 23 seconds up. So he's close on a lap and a half up on where he needs to be as he's coming up to next time through, I think he's 50k. So he's on 55.47 k an hour. This is insane. 23 seconds up on the current record. As he's coming up to 6 minutes to go. Oh. And this isn't, there's another record I forgot to mention. This is something I wanted to bring up. Dan did his first attempt as an unofficial uni champs attempt that he did on Palmer Park Velodrome, I think in 2014. It's an outdoor track. We did 46.9, so he's close on 10k an hour quicker than where he was 8 years ago. His dad's shouting Eddie Merckx, so I think that's trying to inspire him. 55.47 k an hour now. He's well up on this record, still riding 16-second laps. But yeah, we worked out the other day what he did before. So he actually didn't do that many less watts before, that was 8 years ago, but his CDA was not fast. He blamed the bad conditions. Yeah, reckons before he had a CDA over 0.22 when he attempted a unofficial uni record. He literally turned up to the local track and decided he was going to try and ride, and what he's basically made up a record. So I'm going to ride, no one's done a uni record, so I'm making it. And yeah, was mad enough to do almost 47k an hour by himself. A lot has changed since then. He's literally like, he's so aero now, it's just obscene. As he comes in another 16-second lap, 55.49 k an hour. Yeah, this is madness. 4.5 minutes to go. We can almost say if nothing goes wrong, he's comfortably got this. He's 25 seconds up on the old record. He's absolutely flying through this. Yeah, he's fighting. If you look, he's really pushing on the bike. His line's going a little bit. I'll pick him up on that later in Training Peaks notes. But he's doing, he's really fighting. He's really pushing. He's attacking this record. That's what we talked about earlier on. That's what I said. Some people in this situation are all in. It's horrible. The pain is just coming to them. They're falling off pace, they're falling off the record. It's horrible. This fixed gear, when you start slowing down, I've done this in pursuits. I think a lot of people may have experience of doing this in pursuit-based efforts, keto-based efforts, or riding long efforts on the track. When the fixed gear stops going in your favour, it's horrible. You can't pick it up again. Whereas Danny's attacking this in a 15.8 second lap. So he's on 55.5 k an hour right now. He's going to be close on 500 metres more than Victor Campenaerts' record, or 400 some metres more. This is an incredible effort. 27 seconds up on the current record, and he's still building. It's a 15.8 second lap. 15.8.1 second lap. We used to do individual pursuit efforts. We used to do team pursuit efforts of this. 15.9. We literally were on Derby doing team pursuit efforts, and I'd be kicking off and we were dropping below 16s when we weren't meant to. This is absolutely rapid. 57 minutes in now, so 2 and a bit minutes to go. 55.28 k an hour average. He's 27 seconds up on the record. He's still taking time out. And on 16 seconds, you can see he's attacking it. You can see he's rocking, he's rolling, he's pushing. Those pink wheels are going around faster and faster. Like I say, a lot's changed since that effort in Palmer Park, but his fashion sense, unfortunately, has not. He still is obsessed with the colour pink, but he's so, the aerodynamics he's proven so many people wrong on this. So many people thought when he shot to prominence in 2016, this was a flash in the pan. Okay, one guy got himself a bit aero, great. Like, what's he going to do from here? Where's he going to go from there? What else can he do? What else can he do? Instead, he's kept pushing, he's kept driving, he's kept pushing the limits of this sport. He had such an influence in this sport. When the team who Wattbike started, aerodynamic socks weren't a thing. Like, they existed. A couple of pro teams had them, but they didn't market them. They didn't exist. You couldn't buy them. Literally, we brought aero socks to the sport. Like that now, you can't go to a race without seeing everyone wear. We got those socks the morning of our national championships in 2016. Dan literally said, "Put this aerodynamic fabric on this sock," and that actually helped us win the team pursuit. That got all of this in motion. He's going through 16.2, so he's starting to tie up a little bit. He's on 216 laps, so he can afford to tie up a little bit. He's hurting now. This is where the crowd are pushing back on again, back to a 16-second lap. He's got just over a minute to go. Like, it's going to take a lot for it. It's going to take something special for this not to happen now. We're on 54.2 metres, 217 laps, 218 laps now, sorry. 55.54 k an hour average. Another 16-second lap. He's executed this perfectly. And that's one of the things that INEOS helped bring into this. We've come and absolutely executed this ride. That was the whole point. We've brought the physiologist in. There's guys here, Ben Williams, who worked on the INEOS project with the Night Breaking 2 project. INEOS were involved in that. It's all about the execution of this as well. That's what's helped get these extra meters, getting everything right on the day. 220 laps, 55 k an hour he's done. So he's, in theory, done it with 30 seconds to go. He's on 55.4, 16-second lap still. So he's done it, I believe. 20 seconds to go. He's on 55.47 k an hour. He's done 55.250 meters, so he's done it. Like, it's now just a matter of how far he goes. 7 seconds to go, 6 seconds to go, 5 seconds to go. So he has done it. The hour is over. Now he has to complete this last lap. They take the average speed of this last lap and work out how many seconds of it he had done when the gun had fired. So he's got to keep pushing, but he is done. Yeah, right, that's it. Sorted. Magical. Right. Sorry, absolutely chuffed with that myself as well. But yeah, Dan has done amazingly well there. That was something special. He's absolutely smashed that. He's celebrating. He's obviously very happy with that. Like I say, previously he's attempted the British record, but this is his first attempt at the pure world record, and he's absolutely smashed it. The official time will come through shortly. At the moment, the clock is telling me 55 kilometres and 548 metres. So close on 500 metres more than the previous record, 400 metres more than the previous record. Absolutely killed that as he's falling off his bike, giving everyone big hugs. He's got mechanic Rich taking his bike off him. Johnny did his lap timing for him. Ben Williams, who's his boss, has been in charge of this project. And then partner, former record holder herself, Joss Loudon, who only lost her record very recently to Ellen Van Dyke here at this track, giving him a big hug. Ooh, that was exciting. It looked like it was going really well from early on, but yeah, I really didn't want to jinx it. But no, he was on track from just after 30 minutes in. Well, he's on track the whole day. That was our strategy. That was our pacing plan. And he's executed that to perfection. But yeah, we were confident coming into this. Very confident coming into this. We didn't want to let too much slide, but we were very confident coming into this. We thought we'd let the legs do the talking. It's only done when it's done. But that is it. Dan has got the UCI Hour World Record, timed by Tissot. And now they're still doing some sports science. So they are currently weighing him to see how. So he's lost 2.3 kilos of sweat during that. Johnny decided to shout those numbers out. I probably shouldn't have said that on here. That's probably also under NDA as to how much sweat you lose during an hour. But yeah, that gives you an idea. 2 kilos of sweat, over 2 kilos of sweat loss. That is how much this takes out of you. So there was so much stuff going into this. So I think if there's anyone else I've missed out while we're still going through all this, we will try and drag him up for a bit of an interview at some point. Yeah, how much an opportunity we get for that, I'm not too sure. Camera fee's not settled massively. Hopefully we'll drag him up for that in a bit. And yeah, I'll try and go through anyone else that we've lost. Like I say, I think the one sponsor that I'll be told off for not mentioning was I didn't mention he was fully fueled by SIS and had a load of beta fuel, essentially super high carb mix going into this. But yeah, all this was absolutely nailed and dialed by the physiology team and the nutritionists. So as his coach training, I've been in charge of his training, but we let INEOS kind of take over for a bit more of their finalising the cooling, finalising the fueling and all those last little bits and some of the sports science around it all. But yeah, so right now we're just waiting for the official presentation. I think they work out an official distance. There we go. I think the distance is confirmed as 55.548 kilometres, which is, I say, a world record. He's taken that off it to Campenart. His dad coming and giving him a hug. Family members, I say, we've kept it very closed doors here. I say we didn't. One of the reasons didn't want the additional stress, didn't want the additional, like literally crowds can affect the temperature of this building. Kept things in control, but all his close friends, that's his brother Grant, who's in charge of actually in charge of Watch Shop now, has left him that duty. And yeah, we'll. If you want to stay online, we'll see if we can get him up for an interview. If not, if you want to go, you've seen the business. Dan has done it with a 55.548 kilometres. Just trying to listen into what you're saying. So the rough bit was, I think we mentioned the strategy was start steady, build up, then hold 16s. He said he got to 16s and thought, oh God, how am I meant to ride this for the rest of it? But he said he kept in there, kept his head, and then started. And then when they said start attacking, he goes, oh, I can do this. I can attack this now, and did it. So again, I think a massive part of this is the psychology of this effort. It's so difficult. It's so hard to execute. It's not saying that people haven't executed it soft, or it takes a certain level to even attempt this, to even try a record like this. A certain level of insanity. It's not something I'll be taking on anytime soon or have any appeal towards. It is absolutely nails. But yes, there was a few specific methodologies we've put in to try and work around Dan's physiology, Dan's psychology, to make sure he got the most out of this record, so he could pace it, so it was successful. And thankfully it's all worked out to plan. Fancy that, you model it and you plan it, and it works. Yeah, he'll be really proud of that. Really happy. It'd be great. I'm sure he'll absolutely love looking at all the comments on Facebook and stuff from before. He won't do it, and he'll be going back and being like, "Yeah, I showed you." So no, like I say, he's been working for this for years. Like I say, inspired by Bradley Wiggins' attempt in 2015, having his own attempt before that in 2014, round an outdoor velodrome on a cold day in Reading. You know, started it all off, and then he's just found success from then on by applying this aerodynamics, applying this physics to sport, having this applied engineering, and matching that with still an incredible performance. I say the numbers. We won't know exactly till we finish what this will have been somewhere between based on the fact it was successful, around the 360 plus mark, which might not sound like amazing. Like you might think, oh, well, it's good, but it's nothing special. In this situation, in that position, that is so hard. It is completely different. Like again, I have an idea of Dan's drop off, but like for myself, once I'm on a time trial bike in that position, and my position is nowhere near as aggressive as Dan's, you're talking like a 10% drop off. At least, and that's just by being in a more aggressive position. Like obviously Dan's very unique and potentially has overcome that a little bit, and we've done some work to reduce that drop off that he'd have. He's probably got one of the lower drop offs that most people have, but you combine that with the the fixed gear, the constant micro accelerations you get around the banking. So that's another thing that people don't think about. That every time you go into the bank, you get this little micro acceleration through, and then the gear bites back at you a little bit on the straight, and you have that for 222 laps. That really starts to add up, and that's another thing that you've got to overcome. I say the heat, the fixed gear. There's just so many areas that make this so much harder than people realise. Lots of people have gone out and attempted this record and thought, I don't want to say anyone's ever thought this is easy, but on paper it looks so much more achievable. You go, if I get my aero to this, or that power, I've ridden that power before, then it's all good, it's all great. But yeah, it's not that easy. It's super difficult, and I think a lot of people, not deliberately but accidentally, underestimate this effort and how hard it really is. I think we might have Dan coming up for an interview, maybe. He's coming up for an interview, so we will have him if you stay tuned. Just a reminder, if anyone tuned in really, really late, Dan has just broken the hour world record of 55.548 kilometres. I say hopefully he'll be climbing up the stand now. He's just doing some pictures while they prepare for the presentation. I'm not sure if he's going to have his presentation first, or we might have him. So Danny is going to join us. So yeah, he'll be very happy to know how relatively polite I was on the commentary about him. Very different from when we used to commentate on the back in the day on the Who What Bike stream.
Amazing, Dan. Good job.
Yeah, so he's just coming up to us now, so we'll get a little bit of an interview with him.
So maybe a track 40, just 0.6 cooler after warm up. Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Wow.
Right. Oh, if anyone was on camera, I've done my hair on it. Right, this is your mic.
Oh, go on, clip it on me.
Just hold it.
You're
live to hopefully a lot of people.
Hello everyone.
Right. Oh. How was that?
Actually, really good. I think my best paced hour by far. I was a bit ahead of split for the first half, but actually felt really good. And got to halfway, and basically the plan was just trying to ride 16.0s for the second half, which is quite daunting because I've not ridden 16.0s for half an hour before, whatever that is, 56 k an hour. Yeah. Yeah, just a bit mind blowing. Pretty epic.
So, how was this different from the other records? How have you found this environment? What do a bit different here?
Like an ungodly amount of support from INEOS. Like, I think that's what's been like the step change, and not just on the equipment. And they're like, people want to sit and hear me talk about CDA all day long, but like, if anything, it's all the execution, the physiology, all the thermal, nutritional interventions, training interventions, all that kind of stuff. Like, they've just absolutely stepped it up, and like the support I've had around me is second to none. Yeah, it's pretty epic, and it's just made life a whole lot easier just to come here and perform. Even this week, not having to worry about my bike, mechanics, the timing, the live stream, nothing. Just sit home, not even cook dinner. Like, I wake up, I don't even have to put my stuff in the dishwasher. It's been like absolutely everything you'd expect from like this level of team. It's been second to none.
Well, Johnny told us you'd even brought your own book to read.
No, I bought a new copy. Thought I'd give it to the guys here to say thank you, because like Tissot Velodrome, they've supported me a huge amount, not just this year, just in general. And yeah, thought I'd give it to Juan, Nellen and the crew here to have a read.
So, at what point did you think you'd got it?
Well, I guess you never got it until you've actually ridden the laps. This is kind of a scary thing. You're on pace, but you've still got to cover the distance. So I knew kind of, actually I had a bit of a wobbly in the head just after halfway, like how am I going to ride 60 notes the next half an hour? Like that's nuts. Like, you know, like power demand's what that is. It's like, Jesus, I've just got to do it. But it never bit. I was like, this is really easy. It's in control. You just keep doing it. And I think I was like in my head, get to 20 minutes to go, and then like try and press on a bit. And I was like, actually, this is good. Hold this to 15. 15, I was like, I can whack this. Get to 10, try and push on. I got to 5, and it hadn't really bitten. So just kind of, yeah, started scraping the barrel. I think I dropped to 7 in the last 5.
Started whacking it. Is what we say. Although the line did go. The comment from there.
Yeah, I think early on the line was really good, but yeah, last 5 minutes I think it's not just actually the line falling apart. You start to worry of like if you clip a pad and like go down or puncture, it's like there's no time to respond. So you kind of play it a bit safe and don't ride the line you probably should do. Just thinking maybe just riding 10 centimeters up and not put yourself in a risky situation is probably the wise thing to do. But it's actually just really enjoyable and quite nice when you know you've got that safety net, so you can press on into it and see what the legs say and see how far you can really push the record on. In my head I wanted 55.5, so yeah, put another 48 metres on it. It's pretty pleased with that. The spreadsheet works.
So I'm assuming you had all the maths done in your head. You knew exactly how far you were up at different points and how far you were behind. Doing all that, doing all the calculations? Yeah, so
I had 5-minute splits that Johnny was giving me, and I knew it had to be certain time gaps down and then ahead. But I was pretty much a little bit ahead across the entire board. And then you start to do the maths of like, okay, well, to break the record, I've got to ride 16 threes from now, 16 3.5, 16 4s, and it's just like, that's going up, and you're like, well, I'm still clipping around at 16 O's, so like every lap's half a second in your back pocket. It's that really confidence inspiring. So yeah, it's a weird way to get around the hour, but it's nice to do the maths.
Like I say, so with all that pain in your head, you've still got your Excel sheet going on in the background.
Yeah. You've got to like keep yourself somehow focused on something, and like we jumped into my head, like focus on the basics, which is basically line, breathing, and head position. And as long as I keep control of those things, like everything else should fall into place. Like you're just going to push the pedals around as hard as you can anyway, and they're the 3 things you can control. You keep your breathing. And everything feels in control, and I think it's that mental state of making sure that you actually have a handle on things, and then head position obviously from an aerodynamics perspective, and line to make sure you're not covering any more distance than you absolutely need to. And just keep doing them as much as you can, as well as you can.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. I think you're required for your official presentation.
Thank you guys, and thank you to the team, thank you for everybody watching. Thanks.
Right, we'll stay live just to watch the bit of the presentation, and then I'll sign off. Yeah, very happy Dan Bigham with his 55.548k. So as you heard, he was very confident already. Like he was already thinking, can I do 55.5? He loves setting ambitious targets. There's did he have he'll put it. So he has his models, he has his spreadsheets, he knows what he can do, but I can tell you now, every one of them is always so optimistic, it's so driven. It's not what's the safe value I can put in, it's what can I do, what can I target, what's the best number that I can get if everything goes right. And that's the way he always approaches it. I mean, he approaches it to the point that he thinks he can control the weather. It's like, well, what if the air density was to be this today? Wildly, it works though. As he's just being presented now with his, I'm not sure you call that, certificate, his official record, and he gets I believe he gets a Tissot watch as well for all his hard work. As I say, we'll stay tuned for a couple more minutes, let him enjoy his last little bit, I say very, very small crowd in here, just close friends, close family, and then a few official sponsors, a few official partners, and obviously the UCI commissaires here to make sure the record's all good. Bear with us 2 seconds. I'm going to go and drop a Barbados flag off. So Johnny is running down now with the official Barbados flag from adopted nation, or Dan's adopted nation, from the years that we spent living in Derby. We essentially created the nation of Barbados when we were at Track World Cups, and we were always asked what nation we were. We weren't competing for GB, so we made our own. Barbados after Derby. So he's had his nice little picture with his flag there, and his customary bell that you get for finishing this attempt to go with his watch. So it's a nice little goodie bag off the back of all this. So still a few more pictures. Sorry, there's not even can't even give you splits anymore to talk about. And I think unfortunately I've gone through all the history of the event, but as I say, he's put his name there amongst the greats. The list of people that have attempted this record, that have held this record, male, female, some of the top para athletes ever. This is a record that stands in cycling history. And then I say, and even a record that is fiance Joss Loudon has held, that she also got the record here last year. Well, they're recently taken off her by Ellen Van Dijk, so he's now the only record holder in the house right now. Although they're both British record holders, I believe. So and I think that Johnny's also brought him a little pig there, as you may have spotted on the screen and stuff. He's we affectionately also have him known as Piggy, one of his nicknames, which is a lot better than his original nickname, which was when he used to go around calling himself the Raptor, until we took the mick out of him too much for it. So then he stopped using that one. So there's Rich Steels, who's been his bike mechanic throughout this, building these super special bikes. He was still building this into the early hours of the morning, after a few technical issues with bikes. We always have some good fun. We've always spent plenty of time at World Cups sawing bits off here, or making sure that everything's compliant, which is always good fun. Never turns up perfectly when you're trying to push the limit of sport in the way that we are, and the way that Dan does, from an engineering perspective. It's always done to the last minute in the best way possible, not in respects of we leave it to the last minute, as in he pushes for every gain that he possibly can find until the last minute. If it means something gets flown out the day before, that's not a problem. If it's going to make him go faster, that's the attitude that he has. And I think ultimately INEOS as well will be super proud of him, really showing and orchestrating what can be done in a multidisciplinary team, the effects you can have on performance, and how to execute a record like this. That's what he's been brought in for. Some out the box thinking, so a few new ways of doing things, some different attitudes, and hopefully refreshing it all for that team and help have that input. One of the things he's going to be hopefully continuing to work on through a number of years, and including he was still on phone calls even last night regarding the Vuelta. It's obviously kicking off. Now all the classic photos with got Princeton down there, some top engineers, the guy who helped engineer the bike and some of the technology within the skin suit. Got core sensors, all the physiologists. I'm guessing we've probably had enough of this now, so I probably will end this live stream now. Thank you all for coming. Hopefully you've just enjoyed witnessing sport. This big moment in the sport of cycling, breaking this world record. It's a record that's been around since the 1800s, but doesn't actually get broken all that often. They're calling me down for a photo. So I'm going to sign off now. Thank you all for joining us. The further reaction will go to the INEOS Grenadiers socials, and there'll be more reaction throughout the day. Thanks very much, and